The show was running perfectly. Laughter on cue, applause where it should be. Dean Martin delivering lines like he'd been doing it forever, because he had. September 21st, 1973. The Dean Martin Show. Studio 4, NBC Burbank. Everything smooth. Everything controlled. Then something shifted that nobody saw coming. Not the producers, not the crew, not the 15 million people watching at home. What happened in the next 8 minutes would become the most talked about moment in variety television history. The night America watched Dean Martin's famous smile disappear and Johnny Cash make a choice that changed both their careers forever. Dean Martin owned Thursday nights. His variety show was a machine. The format never changed because it didn't need to. Dean walks out, makes jokes, introduces guests, sings, does comedy sketches, repeat. Simple, effective. America loved it. By 1973, he'd done it for 6 years straight. 264 episodes, never missed a taping. The cool guy who made everything look effortless. Tonight had a stacked lineup. Tina Turner for music, Dom DeLuise for comedy, and Johnny Cash as the surprise final guest. The audience didn't know Cash was coming. That was the hook. Rehearsal that afternoon went smooth. Dean hit his marks. The band sounded tight. Lighting, perfect. The director called it textbook. Standard Thursday. Another show in the can by 9 p.m. Dean arrived at the studio at 5 p.m. Hair and makeup by 5:30. Script review at 6:15, though he barely needed it anymore. His assistant brought his pre-show meal. 45 minutes of silence before the performance. Johnny Cash arrived backstage at 7 p.m. He wasn't scheduled until 8:30, but he showed up early, wanted to watch from the wings. He stood in the shadows, stage left, guitar case at his feet. The show went live at 8 p.m. sharp. The band hit the opening theme. The announcer's voice boomed through the studio. "Ladies and gentlemen, Dean Martin." The crowd erupted. Dean walked out through the curtain, that famous smile locked in place, arms spread wide like he was greeting old friends. The applause lasted 20 seconds. He soaked it in, waited for it to die down, then launched into his monologue. The jokes landed, every single one. The audience was hot, laughing at the right moments, groaning at the intentionally bad puns. Dean moved across the stage with that loose, relaxed energy that made it look like he was just hanging out in his living room. No effort, no strain, just Dean being Dean. 15 minutes in, he introduced Tina Turner. She killed her performance. 2 songs back to back, the audience on their feet by the end. Dean came back out, did a quick bit with her, some playful banter, then sent her off with applause. Still running perfectly, still on schedule. At 8:35, Dom DeLuise came out for the comedy sketch. It was a bit they'd done before, Dean playing a doctor, Dom playing a hypochondriac patient. The laughs came easy. Dom was a pro, knew exactly how to play off Dean's deadpan delivery. They wrapped the sketch at 8:42, 3 minutes ahead of schedule, even better than planned. Dean stood center stage, loosening his tie slightly, playing to the audience. "We've got something special coming up," he said. "But first, I want to sing something for you folks." The band started the intro to That's Amore, classic Dean Martin. The song he'd sung 1,000 times, could do it in his sleep. He started singing, voice smooth, hitting the notes. The audience swayed along. Some people sang quietly with him. This was the comfort zone, the part of the show where everyone just relaxed and enjoyed. No surprises, no complications, just Dean doing what Dean does. Second verse, everything's still fine. His voice strong. The band right with him. Cameras capturing it perfectly. Then halfway through the third verse, something changed. Not dramatic, not obvious, just a slight hesitation, a half-beat pause that most people wouldn't even notice. Dean's smile stayed in place, but his eyes shifted, just for a second, like he was looking for something, or remembering something. The band kept playing. The audience kept swaying. Nobody reacted because there was nothing to react to yet. Dean kept singing. But Johnny Cash, watching from stage left, noticed. His head tilted slightly. His eyes narrowed. Something was off. Dean finished the third verse and moved into the bridge. His voice was still there, but the energy had changed. Not worse, different. Like he was singing the words, but thinking about something else entirely. The smile still in place, but harder now, more forced. Fourth verse, the final push to the end of the song. Dean's voice started to waver. Not much, just a slight crack on one note. Could have been nothing, could have been clearing his throat. But it happened again on the next line, and this time people noticed. The audience's swaying slowed. A few people exchanged glances. The cameraman on camera 2 zoomed in slightly, catching the change in Dean's expression. The director in the control booth leaned forward. "What's happening?" someone whispered. Dean reached the final chorus, the big finish, the part where he usually opens his arms wide and really sells it. But his arms stayed at his sides. His voice got quieter instead of louder. And then, right before the last line, he stopped singing. Not a pause for effect, a stop. The band kept playing. The orchestra finished the last 8 bars without him. Dean just stood there, microphone in his hand, staring at something in the distance that nobody else could see. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or wait. The silence felt wrong. The music ended. Dean didn't move. 5 seconds passed. 10. The audience started clapping, uncertain, trying to fill the space. But Dean wasn't acknowledging them. He was somewhere else. The stage manager stepped into view from behind the curtain, making a keep-going gesture. Dean blinked, seemed to register where he was, and looked at the camera. "We're going to take a quick break," he said, his voice flat. Not the playful Dean Martin voice, just flat. The director cut to commercial. The red lights on the cameras went off. The audience murmured, confused. Dean stood there for another moment, then turned and walked off stage. Not rushed, not dramatic, just walked. Backstage was chaos. The producer grabbed Dean as he came through the curtain. "What happened? Are you okay?" Dean didn't answer. He kept walking toward his dressing room. The producer followed. "Dean, we've got 8 minutes of show left. Johnny Cash is supposed to come out. We need—" Dean stopped walking, turned to look at the producer. His face was different now. The performance was completely gone. "I can't do this anymore," he said quietly. "Can't do what? The show? Dean, we're live. We've got millions of people." "I can't pretend anymore." Dean's voice wasn't loud, wasn't angry, just tired. "I've been pretending for 6 years. Tonight, I ran out." The producer stared at him, trying to understand what was happening. Pretending what? Dean didn't answer. He just looked at his dressing room door, 20 feet away like it was a mile. He looked exhausted, not physically, something deeper than that. Johnny Cash appeared from the shadows. He'd followed them from the stage. "Dean," he said, his voice calm, not panicked like everyone else, just calm. Dean turned to look at him. "I know what you're feeling," Cash said. "I've been there." Dean's jaw tightened. For a second, it looked like he might break, actually break, but he held it together, barely. "You don't know," Dean said. "Nobody knows." "Then tell them," Cash said simply. The producer looked between them, completely lost. "Tell who what? Dean, what is happening?" Dean looked at Cash for a long moment. Something passed between them, some kind of understanding. Then Dean took a breath. "I need 5 minutes," he said to the producer. "Give me 5 minutes, then bring the cameras back up." "And then what?" the producer asked, desperate. "Then I go back out there and I stop lying." The producer opened his mouth to argue, to ask what that meant, but Dean was already walking away. Cash followed him. They disappeared into Dean's dressing room. The door closed. The producer stood in the hallway alone, trying to process what had just happened. Through the walls, he could hear the audience murmuring, confused, waiting. The commercial break would end in 3 minutes. He had no idea what was about to happen. All he could do was pray it wouldn't be a disaster. Inside the dressing room, Dean sat on the couch, head in his hands. Cash leaned against the wall. For a minute, neither spoke. "I'm tired, Johnny." "I know," Cash said. "Not physically. Tired of being this character, this guy who always has a joke ready and doesn't care about anything. That's not me." Cash nodded. But it's what they want. It's what everyone wants, Dean said. The network, the audience, my kids. But I'm not that guy. I don't know if I ever was. So what happened out there? Dean was quiet. I was singing that some more, looking at all those people smiling, and I realized they have no idea who I am. They love this version that doesn't exist, and I've been that version so long, I don't know how to be anything else. That's why you stopped. I couldn't keep going. Not one more line. I've been on autopilot for years, making everyone laugh, but inside I've been disappearing. Cash sat next to him. You can keep being what everyone wants and slowly die, or you can risk being who you actually are. Those are your only choices. What if they don't want who I am? Then they never wanted you, Cash said. They wanted the performance. It's not enough anymore. Then go back out there, said Cash, and let them see the real you. I don't know if I can. Yes, you do, said Cash. You've already started. Going back is just finishing. They walked out together. The stage manager counted down. Back in 30 seconds. Dean took a breath. Okay, let's go. The cameras went live. The audience applauded, relieved, but the applause died quickly. Dean walked to center stage slowly. No swagger, no smile. He stood at the microphone and looked into camera one. I need to tell you something. What you saw when I stopped singing wasn't planned. I stopped because I couldn't keep going, not because I forgot the words, because I forgot who I was. Complete silence. For 6 years, I've been Dean Martin, the guy with the drink, the guy with the joke, and you loved that guy. But that guy is exhausting to be. Tonight, I ran out of energy to keep pretending. Nobody moved. I don't have a punchline. I just have this truth. I've been disappearing behind the performance so long that I forgot there was supposed to be a real person underneath. The vulnerability was shocking. This wasn't how television worked. People didn't break character. They didn't admit struggle. They kept up the illusion. That was the job. Johnny Tash walked onto the stage, unannounced, unplanned. He walked right up to Dean and stood next to him. Didn't say anything, just stood there, solid, present. Dean looked at him. Something passed between them. Then Dean looked back at the camera. Johnny Cash just did something that took more courage than anything I've done tonight, Dean said. He walked out here without knowing what I was going to say or do. He just showed up, because that's what real friends do. They show up when you're falling apart. Cash finally spoke. Can I say something? Dean nodded. Cash looked at the camera. What Dean just did is the bravest thing I've seen on television, because he stopped performing and started being honest. And that's terrifying. I know because I've had to do it. Standing on a stage and admitting you're not okay, that takes everything you have. The audience started applauding. Not polite applause, real applause, the kind that comes from recognizing something true. Dean's eyes welled up. He fought it back, almost made it, but one tear escaped. The camera caught it. 15 million people saw Dean Martin cry on live television. He didn't wipe it away. He just let it be there. I don't know what happens after tonight, Dean said. I don't know if you'll still want to watch this show if I'm not always making you laugh. But I can't keep disappearing. I have to try being real, even if that means being uncomfortable, even if that means showing you the parts of me that aren't entertaining. The applause got louder. People in the audience were crying now, too. This was supposed to be a variety show, light entertainment. Instead, they were watching something break open in real time. Johnny Cash put his hand on Dean's shoulder. Let's sing something, Cash said quietly. Dean looked at him, uncertain. Not for the show, not for them, just for us. Something true. Dean nodded. The band, improvising, started playing a slow, simple melody. Cash and Dean sang together. No choreography, no performance. Just two voices, honest and raw, singing about struggle and survival and the cost of pretending to be someone you're not. When they finished, the studio erupted. Standing ovation, sustained. Dean stood there, exhausted, emptied out, but somehow lighter, like something he'd been carrying for years had finally been set down. The show ended 10 minutes later. No more comedy bits, no closing jokes. Just Dean and Johnny talking quietly at the edge of the stage while the credits rolled. America watched two legends being human instead of legendary. And somehow, that meant more. The aftermath was immediate. NBC's phone lines exploded, some angry their entertainment was disrupted, but far more calling to say thank you, to say they'd felt the same way, to say seeing someone be honest about struggling made them feel less alone. The ratings for that episode were the highest the Dean Martin show ever had. Dean never went back to the old format. The show continued for 2 more seasons, but different, more honest, less polished. Dean would still joke, but he'd also talk about real things. Audiences stayed with him. Johnny Cash later said, "That night taught me something. We think people want us to be perfect, but what they really want is to know they're not alone in falling apart." Dean gave them that. The lesson of September 21st, 1973 wasn't about television or celebrity. It was about the courage to stop pretending, to risk showing the truth even when the truth isn't polished or comfortable. Dean Martin broke down on live television that night, but in breaking down, he broke through, and 15 million people watched him become more real than he'd ever been. If this story of courage and authenticity moved you, subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs permission to stop pretending they're okay. Have you ever had to choose between maintaining an image and being honest? Tell us in the comments. And turn on notifications for more moments that remind us what really matters.